Hey there, I'm Brittany Smith, and welcome to Filmmaker Symposium. Have you ever wondered why a story might be riveting versus a story that's super boring? Well, it turns out that the bones of a story start with the inciting incident. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the inciting incident and how that affects your story and what it does for your story. So what exactly is an inciting incident? So an inciting incident is the event in your story where the protagonist's world is completely turned out of sync. So this would be a negative to a positive change or a positive to a negative change. Now this is a common theme in story structure, so if you haven't seen my other videos, you might benefit from going and watching those. But this is a very common theme. You have to have change in your story. So I'm going to give an example of a negative change and a positive change. So the negative change, let's say we have a prince who has lived with his happy family in a palace, living the royal life. And then all of a sudden one day, his father is murdered by a dragon. So that is a circumstance of a positive situation turning into a negative situation. And now we have something that's going to propel our character forward to take action. Now, the opposite would be a positive change. So let's say we have a pauper who lives in a village that's poor and he has friends and family there. And then one day he gets notified that he is actually the heir to the throne of a deceased king. So then he rises to power and wealth and experiences a positive change. So that's a situation in which he was in a negative circumstance, being poor and not having enough money. Then all of a sudden he's raised to wealth and power. So the inciting incident is that thing in your story that propels your character to do something. So what exactly is the purpose of the inciting incident? Well, the reason why we have the inciting incident is because it forms our protagonist desire. Now, this protagonist desire is super important because the desire is what takes us from point A to point B in our story. Desire is kind of like the airplane that takes us from Los Angeles to Orlando. You can't get from Los Angeles to Orlando without some kind of transportation, whether that be airplane or car. But it's the same with story. You can't get from the beginning to the end without some kind of desire in your protagonist. Now, here's an example of the desire in our dragon story. So let's say the prince has the desire to get revenge on the dragon. That is what's going to propel our story from point A to point B. So the whole story is going to be building up to this idea that he is going to get revenge on the dragon, or maybe he isn't. Now, the other example would be the pauper. So let's say the pauper's desire when he becomes king is to have total and absolute power. Well, that is going to be the driving force of our story the entire way through, and everything is going to be based around this desire. Now, this desire that carries us to the end is called story spine. So like I said, the story spine is the protagonist's desire. Now there are two sides to the coin on this desire. You can have the conscious desire and you can have the subconscious desire. And actually having both sides of this coin in your story makes for a more interesting story. So let's say in the context of our prince story, so the prince is fighting against the dragon, but he portrays to his people as he's rounding up the troops. He makes a speech and says he's going to maintain liberty and he's going to defend his city. So that seems like the conscious desire. That is the verbalized one. That's the one that we think he is actually pursuing. But we also know deep down inside throughout the story, if we do it right, you can have a subconscious desire of revenge against the dragon. And in stories where you use both of these, the one that really comes through at the end is going to be the subconscious desire. So the climax is not necessarily going to be dealing with protecting the city. It's going to become evident that the prince is wanting revenge. Now, in the pauper story, we could have the pauper start out when he becomes king, he can start out helping the poor and defending the rights of the innocent and all that. But then beneath the surface, the subconscious desire of the king is actually to have total and complete power. So this makes for an interesting development of your story by the time the climax comes through. So having this dueling conscious and subconscious desire is a great way to grip your audience. So the inciting incident, along with the story's spine, need to produce some sort of unspoken promise. Whenever you watch a movie, you probably already have a little hankering of what the end is going to be like based on the inciting event. And most of your audiences will have that same intuition. So you want to make sure that your promise or your climax is actually going to be opposite of your inciting event, because that's what people are expecting. Now, in our Prince story, we had a negative inciting event. So by the end of the story, we need to have a positive event. So this positive event could be that he defeats the dragon. That is going to be the opposite of the inciting event. Now, with the pauper story, we have the positive change in which he enters into power and wealth. So by the end of the story, there needs to be some sort of misfortune. And that's what creates an interesting story. If you have just the same thing going throughout the story, you have negative, 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 you're going to bore your audience. If you have positive, 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 you're going to bore your audience. You need to have opposite and opposite. There needs to be some sort of change which creates interest in your story event. Essentially, stories are just one big change, so there has to be that negative to positive or positive to negative. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you want more book recommendations or links to other videos, I'll have those in the description section below. And if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe and share with your friends. So I'll see you next time on Filmmaker Symposium.